Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Runewords. Today we're going to be going over one of the new PTR 2.6 Runewords known as Ground. Ground was recently announced, and it is not finished. It's important to remember that none of these runewords are completely done. When they're in PTR, our feedback does matter, and we could potentially change the course of how these runewords go. But let's go over the runeword as it is right now, and let's talk about the variances. So right off the bat, it is Shael, Io, Ort, so extremely cheap, Io being the most expensive rune in that list, and Ios honestly, quite honestly, aren't really that expensive. You usually end up with quite a large number of them at the end of a season, and I'm kind of happy to see them in a rune word like this that can be relatively utilitarian. The Ort rune is what decides which, the last rune is what decides which element they are, so all these helmets are essentially the same recipe, but the last rune, for instance, if you put a Thul rune in it, it's cold, if you put a Ral rune in it, it's fire, and so forth and so on, and so we have some very interesting effects here. Now, with this helmet, it does come with 20% faster recovery, which of course is because of the Shael rune. And that is absolutely excellent for just about any character and also mercenaries. If you guys are unaware, the Act 2 mercenary has the worst faster recovery breakpoints out of just about every mercenary. And they're on par with the Sorceress, which is terrible. The Sorceress, the same Sorceress that gets stuck in stun locks, faster hit recovery stun locks, basically. And she dies because she can't get out of a hit recovery loop. The Act 2 Mercenary has the same frames. So it's important to note that 20% faster recovery on a Merc could be invaluable. We also have a roll of between 75 to 100% enhanced defense, which is pretty sick. And that means that you have a pretty decent defense helmet, to be honest. In fact, if they roll F, they can go as high as like 200 and 300 defense, depending on what you're rolling it in. In fact, it can go even higher if you find like a really nice elite base. Although this is a level 35 recipe. It's important to remember that this is a mid-tier recipe, which is kind of surprising for the stats that it has at level 35. We also have plus 10 vitality, which unfortunately does not work on mercenaries, but it will work on your character. And the amount of HP that it gives you is going to vary depending on, of course, your specific character. Paladins and barbarians tend to get more, and sorceresses and necromancers and druids tend to get less, and then there's the in-between classes. But depending on what character you are, you will get some pretty decent vitality HP conversion going on. We also have a nice increased maximum life of 5%, which does help out your character and your mercenary. So you get a nice little bump in life no matter what for your merc, and also a really nice bump in life for your character, which is going to be variable depending on which character you're playing. But between the vitality and the increase of maximum life, it's a pretty nice little chunk. We also have a lightning resistance on this, which of course is because of the Ort rune. So the 30% lightning resistance comes from the Ort rune itself, and then it also rolls between 10 to 30% more lightning resistance. So it goes between 40 to 60, which is pretty nice. And then on top of that, it also rolls between 10 to 15 lightning absorption. Now, the rolls on this aren't really that big of a deal because of the relatively cheap nature of the helmet. You could totally reroll this 4 or 5 times until you got something that was resembling perfect. And I can't really imagine that a lot of people wouldn't have a lot of Shaels and Orts laying around. And although Ios might be more rare than Shaels and Orts, you tend to have a lot of those lying around also, so not really a huge deal there. Now, I don't want to just show you pictures. I want to actually give you the items to download and play with. So I've gone ahead and created these for you and uploaded them into my GGM's item pack so that you guys can download them and play around with them at your leisure. I have for you here a death mask. I have a wolf head with Hurricane, a wolf head with, apparently I forgot to do the Armageddon wolf head. Too bad. And I also have the natural resistance wolf head. And then I have an ethereal version here in the barbarian helmet, and then I also have the regular. This one is really just for mercs, and then of course the battle orders and the shout, so you can play around with that on a barb if you want to. With the lightning one, I can see a couple uses for it. So I was thinking about this off the top of my head, and there are a couple monsters in the game that have some pretty ridiculous lightning damage. Mephisto is one of them. And of course, Gloams. This could be a very interesting stopgap measure for defense against Gloams and Mephisto, and even maybe Uber Mephisto if you just wanted like a really budget helmet to help protect you versus his lightning, because he does have some pretty freaking crazy lightning damage. Not only does he have the charge bolts, but he also has the orb, and he also has the lightning attack. So when you go up against Uber Mephisto, in combination with that ridiculous conviction that he has, having a way to bump up your lightning resistance even further than you might normally bump it up, that is extremely cheap as a budget option, it certainly isn't terrible. 15% lightning absorption is really nice. And 60% lightning res is actually pretty sick to give you what you're looking for. And then that little bump in HP and the faster recovery is certainly not bad either. I would like to see them, honestly, though, add maybe some more into it. I can see they have a theme going, right? You know, the previous ones have been the poison, the fire, the cold, right? I really would like to see them add in just like a proccing effect that has something to do with lightning. Maybe like, just for instance on this would be really cool is like maybe like a low level of T-Storm or something would be fun. Just like get like a level 5 T-Storm proc on it. Could be really interesting. Just to have like freaking everybody running around with like little thunderstorms just like hitting targets all the time. And yeah, it might not necessarily do that much damage, but I guarantee you if you threw T-Storm on here, people would be a lot more interested in this helmet than if it, you know, stays as it is. Another thing that has kind of bothered me about all these helmets is that they seem to be eerily pointed toward the mercenaries, but at the same time they also don't have any lifesteal. And as you guys all know, one of the most popular Act 2 Merc helmets in the game, or weapons in the game, is Insight, right? But Insight doesn't have any lifesteal on it, and neither do these helmets, which kind of make them non-choices, unfortunately, for a lot of mercenaries, because you're going to be looking for that, you know, Crown of Thieves, or maybe even an Undead Crown, or, you know, whatever it is that you've got that has lifesteal on it to, you know, create that situation where you can actually utilize the Insight to its best ability. Now, one thing I did notice about these helmets is that they seem very specific to, you know, like, what you're trying to farm. So, like, you could almost have, like, all 4 of these, or all 5 of these just sitting in your stash, and you could just, you know, utilize them at any point on your mercenary for a specific purpose. Like, for instance, you could have one for cow level, which is the physical damage one, which I'll be going over next. You can have one when you're doing, you know, farming like Bale for the Gloams, or you could have the fire one when you're doing Trav, or the Act 3 waves of the Bale runs. I mean, there's tons of different utilizations for these, and like, if you could just like swip and swap them out on command, like, it certainly would be cool. And they're not exactly super duper expensive, right? So you totally could have one of each helmet just sitting on standby for use at any time. You know, hopefully if they give us some more stash boost. But you know, it's definitely a cheap enough recipe that that's something that is plausible, is having one of these, like, in one of each of these on hand at any time to help you protect against a particular resistance. You know, like maybe, for instance, you guys are doing Bale runs and you're walking TZ Bale Worldstone and there's Gloams all over the place. You know, you might just have the lightning one sitting in your cube, and at any time just take it out, put it on, like when you're fighting the Gloams, and then as soon as you leave Worldstone level 2, because there's no Gloams on Worldstone level 3, you take it off. And then when you get back to Throne of, you know, the throne can potentially have Gloams in it as well, so you throw it back on until the throne is clear, and then you take it back off. Like, it's one of those helmets that could come in handy as a utilitarian item, which I think is pretty cool. Although I would like to see what kind of feedback you have on these helmets, what you would potentially change. Do you like my T-Storm idea? I don't know. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and look out for the next one, which is going to be the physical damage one.